Hey, credit repair experts. How's it going today? Hope you're having an awesome Friday. Today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about setting your goals in regards to credit. Um, anytime I personally set goals, what I like to do is I like to set up what are called SMART goals. And with SMART goals, I'm actually able to make sure that my goals are going to be realistic, that they're going to be achievable, that they're going to be time sensitive. And whenever you start adding in all these things, whenever you set your goals, you'll start to find that they become more actionable and they become more realistic. And your goals also tend to put a little bit more pressure on yourself instead of it being like a loose timeline where you can achieve your goal anytime because you have your whole life ahead of you. Whenever you put a hard date on things, you'll start to discover that you realize that those time frames are coming up, and you're like, oh my god, I need to achieve this. Right? So we're going to be talking a little bit about how I set my goals first, and then we'll go ahead and dive into how this can kind of be tied in to you repairing your own credit or even having somebody else repair your credit for you the way that we do it. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. So I like to set SMART goals, as I said earlier. And whenever it comes to SMART goals, it's obviously an acronym. So let's go ahead and break it down. So whenever you set SMART goals, you're wanting to be as specific as possible. So whenever I say being specific, I mean what exactly is going to be accomplished and what actions do you have to take to be able to accomplish those goals. Next up, are they measurable? So what data are you going to measure to the goal? How much of the data are you collecting? And how well are you actually doing it? So we'll go ahead and go to the next step, which is it achievable? So by achievable, I mean, is the goal even doable? Right? Is it realistic for you? Do you have the necessary skills to actually be able to do it? And the resources if you do have the skills. Okay? The next step is it relevant? So how much does this specific goal align with your overall goals? Right? Sometimes, even though it makes sense in the short term, it doesn't necessarily make sense in the long term. I may decide to work with this other company or for this other company, but if my goal is to be able to travel the world, then, is this going to meet my short-term financial goals? Yeah, maybe, absolutely. But is it going to give me the freedom that I want to be able to do all the other things in life that I want to achieve? Not necessarily. So we have to make sure that whenever we're setting our goals, it aligns with our larger goals in life as well. And then finally, is it timed? So what's the time frame that you're looking at to accomplish this specific goal? So let's go ahead and tie that into fixing their credit, right? So specifically, what's going to be accomplished? Okay, so first of all, you need to understand, are you just trying to get a better credit score? Do you want the prestige that comes with having a really high score? Do you want to be practical and be able to use your score to be able to tap into awesome things like bonuses for cards and, like being able to actually use it to be able to avoid higher interest rates, being able to actually use your score to be able to avoid paying fees. Maybe you have really bad credit and you're just trying to get it better so you can get a new apartment or, move into a new house that you're going to be renting. Or maybe you're trying to buy a house and you need it to be a little bit higher just so that you can get better rates on the house. So, what needs to be accomplished for you to actually be able to get there and what actions do you need to be able to take. So, the next thing is, making it measurable. So, how much data are you going to need to be able to measure your goal? Okay, so you need to know specific things whenever it comes to collecting data, like how much time does it take in order to actually be able to do the disputing process overall? How many times are you going to have to communicate back and forth on average with the credit bureaus and with the creditors until an item or all the items get removed? You're also going to need other pieces of data that are relevant, such as who do you need to contact just in case that the creditors and bureaus don't want to remove any of the items. And you're going to need to know things like what laws are relevant to you, the consumer, right? So whenever you're doing the disputing process, these are how you're going to actually be able to measure your results, okay? And the more data you have, the better you'll be able to measure. And then let's go into achievability, right? So is the goal that you set for yourself achievable? If you're trying to buy a house and you need to get your credit score boosted because you're, renting right now and your rental is about to end, well, then probably not, right? Just knowing that the credit bureaus have 45 days to be able to respond to any letter that you send out, no matter where you're at in the disputing process, means that if you're communicating back and forth with them, let's just say 4 times, right? Every single time that you send a letter to them, they have a month and a half to be able to respond, which means communicating with them 4 times could be 6 months, right? So make sure that whenever you set out to actually dispute items yourself, that you're making sure that the goal that you're setting for yourself is achievable. Otherwise, you're just going to be let down whenever you get to the end, and you're going to be disappointed that you weren't able to actually complete your goal. And then you have the necessary skills and the resources available, right? So, believe it or not, fixing your own credit actually takes time and money and skill. So, you have to know what to do if the creditors respond to you and they tell you, hey, this debt's come back validated, because more than likely they're going to do that. You have to be able to pay every single time that you're sending letters, right? Sometimes you can send them regular mail, and that's perfectly fine. But other times you might want to make sure that you're sending a certified green return receipt, right? Which takes money, okay? You don't necessarily need to do that every time, but again, that comes with the skills to know when you do need to do that and when you don't need to do that. So make sure that you have relevant skills and the resources available to you to actually be able to dispute it yourself. If that's the route that you want to take. Otherwise, you could hire somebody such as us, but again, that's also having the resources, right? You have to be able to pay for a professional to be able to perform the services that you need completed, right? So kind of know where you're coming from and what angle you're wanting to take whenever you're diving into this journey of fixing your credit. Finally, how relevant is it? How much does it align with your broader goals? So you need to kind of comprehend, what are you trying to do with your credit? Are you just trying to buy a house? Are you trying to get that new car? Whenever you're trying to buy a house and you want your credit to be good enough to be able to do it, you don't really need like an 800 credit score. You can get away with having like a 720 credit score. That's perfectly acceptable if you're trying to buy a house, especially with the way that the market is moving now. A lot of the housing market is moving away from individualized credit scores, and they're moving towards in-house financing options, right? So, having a super high credit score for that is, after a certain degree, having a higher credit score is not really going to help you so much, because you're going to start to move away from that consumer financing, and you're going to really start moving towards higher things, like getting better deals on credit cards and such. Whenever you start to get into the higher credit scores, like the 800s, they won't even offer you certain credit cards until you get into the 800s. So, kind of know what your broader goal is. Are you trying to buy a house with a car, or are you trying to tap into awesome credit cards with really cool bonuses that allow you to be able to travel for free, stay in hotels for free, get upgraded for free, because you're a VIP member, just because you have this card, you tap into points, right? So know what your goal is and overall, and what you're trying to do with your credit score. Next, and last of all, time yourself. Okay? So if you don't set a time for yourself to be able to achieve your credit goals, you can always put it off. And then you'll find yourself struggling at the last minute to get everything done, scrambling, and trying to get on your feet. So don't ever put yourself in that position. where you're trying to do everything last minute because it's gonna stress you out, and it's really just not worth it, right? So think ahead about what it is that you're trying to do and set a realistic time for you to be able to achieve it. If you have a lot of items on your credit report, don't find yourself like one of my previous clients who recently reached out to me, and they had over 60 derogatory items on their credit score, and then they're reaching out to me 5 months later, and they're like, oh, why hasn't this one thing been removed from my credit report? Well, you have a large amount of items, and while yes, we can dispute basically all of them at the same time, it's gonna take a little while because those larger ticket items are gonna fight harder to get off, right? So don't ever put yourself in that position where you need a new car or you have to move into this house because it's your dream home, you just found it on the market, and you're not actually able to move into it because you have all these items in your credit report that you haven't gotten taken off yet, right? So I would say a good time to set for yourself to be able to get your credit fixed. Better shoot over than under. Realistically, I would give yourself, if you have just a few items on your credit report, at least 6 months. But if you have a lot of items on your credit report, give yourself 8 months. If you're like me and you want to be an overachiever, then aim for 10 months, right? So 10 months, I know may seem like a long time, but if you have an item like, say, a bankruptcy that you're trying to get removed, or you have a large mortgage from a house that previously got went into collections for whatever reason, it was foreclosed on or whatever the reason is, those larger ticket items, they're typically going to fight to come off. And while, yes, you can get them removed, it's going to take a bit more time. So set a realistic time for yourself to not fall flat on your face you whenever you're trying to move towards your goals. Okay? So that pretty much does it for goal setting. That's how I set my personal goals. If you guys have something that works really awesome for you, I'd love to hear about it. Go ahead and put it in the comments. And otherwise, hope you guys have an awesome day. It's Friday. The weekend's coming up. Enjoy yourselves. We'll see you again on Monday.